Okay, so this is why this course is so effective. It's because that, as we already know, as you already know, ICT can support and enhance literacy teaching and learning. Right, so there's a key point. We know that it does. So how does your planning make it more effective? Well, we're actually planning literacy with ICT. That's what we're talking about here. How does it make it more effective? Well, first of all, right, literacy can be enhanced with ICT. Okay, that's a given. The second thing is, why not develop ICT capability in your literacy alongside literacy learning? Because not only do you have the opportunity, you're using ICT to enhance literacy, why not build on that? Help build on a child's ICT capability at the same time. ICT capability is best developed in subject-related contexts. So whether it be literacy, numeracy, geography, whatever subject we talk about. However, for this particular course, we're talking literacy. And as a primary teacher, this is really just like the golden egg of your planning. You are effectively teaching and assessing literacy and ICT capabilities. So these principles that are so entwined together are ideally embedded in literacy with ICT teaching and learning. And you'll find that many of the strategies that you use for literacy can also be used for ICT capability teaching. So you can do it at the same time. Just one example here. So, for example, you wanted to show text on the screen. What if you were using a word processor and you were showing how to construct text, but at the same time, you could be planning on demonstrating to your students that this technique is best used for this purpose for literacy construction. So this ICT skill or technique is best used for this purpose for literacy construction. So now we're going to look at what are some main issues then. Well, because literacy can be enhanced with ICT capability, with ICT, you need to be aware of these issues. And one of the key issues is that many teachers have difficulties in planning ICT activities that can help children develop their own ICT capability. And this might be from other factors, such as it could be that you could lack confidence in ICT. Or on the other hand, it could be that you might be confident in ICT, but be uncertain as to how the ICT activities can be constructed in literacy teaching to develop ICT capabilities. And this course actually then helps you to be able to do that in a very effective way. It helps you to build on your confidence with ICT by learning how to structure ICT activities in a way that you will not only enhance literacy learning, but develop ICT capability. And then thirdly, and I might have already covered this briefly before in another section, is that the extent to which ICT can be used effectively to support literacy learning and teaching depends on a large extent to your own capabilities in ICT. Now that's very important to think about, because if you don't feel confident in ICT, how can you effectively support children in your own class with ICT in literacy learning? You might feel a little bit constrained. You might just resort to maybe the haphazard development of skills, such as, well, you could just sort of get the students to draft the work on paper first and then put it onto a word processor to be able to then put up the final product. But that's not how it works. So these are the four key factors, key issues that you need to be aware of when you are planning to teach literacy with ICT. So let's now get into the planning, the instructional cycle of literacy ICT integration. And you may already be familiar with this type of cycle. We have planning, implementing, assessing and reflecting. So delving into it, your planning stage would involve a lot of technology consideration. And in your ebook, you'll find a list of ICT tools that you can use to teach literacy effectively. And I go into how you can, about class integration, how you can, I also go into how each of those ICT tools can be used for literacy teaching and learning, the strategies that you can use, the processes, the steps involved. The other part here is, the second phase is, of course, implementing. So any of those ICT tools that you can find in your ebook under the section of what you need to know, any of those ICT tools, you might find that students may be able to use like a word processor, for example, or graphics software in the demonstration of reading comprehension in some activities. The third phase, assessing student learning. So we already know that assessment is very closely connected to planning. Assessment and planning are essentially like that. They really are, they're like that. So your assessment is to inform decision-making regarding future instructional plans and implementation. And you might determine, for example, to what degree your learning objectives were met. How will you provide further support to students who are still working towards understanding in literacy, and also, again, ICT capability. An example of this to really glue it together for you, to make it very cohesive understanding, is, for example, preparing and delivering a PowerPoint presentation of how it's a clear example of how technology can be used to support the development of the final product. And then the last stage is a real focus on self-assessment. And so to become more of a responsive teacher, you need to engage in reflection throughout the instructional cycle about your teaching and learning with ICT in literacy lessons. TPAC for literacy teaching should also be considered as part of your instructional cycle here. So as you can see there are, of course, a clear representation of how each of the TPAC elements combines for your planning of technology integration in literacy lessons. And so to implement your TPAC, you would need to consider, for example, how ICT tools can help and can enhance and help accomplish the goals and objectives of writing. So here's an example for you in your terms of planning. So if you were teaching a lesson about writing stories, you could consider having the students use a digital medium, such as a video, audio, or presentation software to tell the stories themselves. As a teacher, here's what you need to do to challenge yourself to do. First of all, your content knowledge. So for this, you must now think in terms of graphic and visual literacy, as well as reading and writing literacy. Students today and the future need to be proficient in using ICT. ICTs that allow them to read and search content in documents. So they also need to know how to interpret and produce communication in video and images, in addition to text form. So as a teacher, you need to ensure that you are familiar with these types of skills in relation to your TPAC content knowledge. The other part of your TPAC for literacy with technology integration is, of course, pedagogical knowledge. And in terms of this example, you would need to acquire new pedagogical knowledge and skills in addition to being able to create new strategies to meet the special needs of an increasing diverse population. And then finally, you would need to also consider your technological knowledge or your ICT capability. As I've mentioned before, how your capabilities in ICT has an impact on the extent to which ICT can support literacy teaching and learning. So you need to become proficient in the new ICT tools and resources that both help define literacy in the 21st century and make possible strategies to teach these new literacies. Now, as a final note, in terms of technological knowledge, you might ask the question, do you need to know everything? And the answer is simply no, because it is impossible to know everything about all the technology, all the information and communication technology out there. So for your planning, make sure that you consider yourself or prepare yourself to walk into that room as a learner alongside the students. And I'll go into this in more detail in other section, but generally the best approach is to focus on one ICT, one information and communication technology device that you are familiar with, and begin to imagine the potential for learning with that technology within the literacy context itself. And so now some further steps in your planning. So what you can do in terms of each of those phases of the instructional cycle, you can invite an instructional coach or colleague to facilitate lesson observation and debriefing with you. This sort of activity will provide you with the opportunity to demonstrate literacy with ICT integration in your lesson, and then following the lesson, discuss with your observer the lesson observation guide attached to this video. This type of conversation will provide you with the opportunity to share your planning process, instructional intentions, and reflections on the lessons itself. Then we look at assessing student learning. And it is advised that you select 2 or 3 students representing a range of literacy achievements to follow throughout the year. Then throughout the year, collect work samples from these students, from these students' engagement in literacy ICT activities, and make sure that you label them appropriately throughout the year so you don't lose them in your planning notes. That's a very important part, and to help you with that, there is a label that you can use that is attached to this video. Then there is assessing and reflecting. And of course, it is important that you record your thoughts regarding the integration of ICT in literacy teaching and learning throughout the instructional cycle itself. So planning for instruction becomes more complex with the integration of ICT. So here are some guiding principles for your professional learning throughout this course. So First of all, you need to be aware that this online workshop is committed to focusing on meaningful, purpose-driven literacy instruction, first and foremost. It helps you to thoughtfully embed technology rather than use it just for its own sake. Secondly, this course also supports and it supports what research suggests, that it will encourage you to assume a stance of critical thinking and reflection. And this is very important when considering instructional innovations. Thirdly, this course also emphasizes your role as the instructional decision maker, as the use of technology makes your role as a teacher more meaningful and not less in the 21st century.